how does this day find you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for asking. How are you? All right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. That's the first time anyone's asked.
Remember those
Yeah.
manners.
No, first person to ask me. I'm well, thank you very much. Yeah, you come from a long line of journalists, broadcasting in the past. Tell us a little bit about your history and what you've done in the past and where you are today.
Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, I guess for me, it goes back to the fact that kind of when I was school, sixth form, and thinking about going to university, I honestly really had no idea what exactly I wanted to do. I was fortunate, very fortunate, in fact, that my father was a journalist, and was currently the then sort of picture editor for the Daily Express. And when I decided to go to university and study media and communication, he, almost to give me a bit of substance, sort of invited me to kind of take unpaid work experience. I was then sort of 17, nearly 18, just sort of once a week on his, sort of in his department, which was a fantastic opportunity, because it sort of gave me sort of an insight into kind of not just what, sort of working in media looked like, but also kind of what the real world sort of looked like from that sort of point of view. And I managed to build myself from there. The unpaid work quickly became paid work. Whilst I was studying as well, it really helped to have sort of like these kind of practical experience to align what I was studying alongside. And then, sort of graduating university, I sort of stayed within the kind of sort of the picture world within newspapers, and the work really started to come thick and fast. And it was sort of, obviously I eventually left my dad's side, and I went on to sort of work at the Daily Telegraph, who gave me my first staff job, and from there, if my memory serves me correctly, I think I was just turned 27 when I sort of got promoted to quite a senior position. I was number 2 in my department, which was for me a fantastic opportunity.
Was that from the assistant editor to deputy editor, was it?
Yeah, so from assistant picture editor to deputy picture editor, which sort of gave me a lot of there's a lot of responsibility, a lot to sort of take on. Because I was just turned 27. And from there, I kind of, the sort of digital world was really kind of growing rapidly. The Mail Online, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, kind of had emerged this like really kind of powerful force on the internet, and was sort of dominating kind of newspaper websites. They then offered me a job as deputy picture editor there. So moving into digital, that was a bit of a no-brainer. I felt like I was kind of future-proofing myself. And after a couple of years there, I was given the opportunity to go to the Sun to become digital picture editor there. And sort of basically, the website was at the time behind a paywall. And so it basically gave me the opportunity to sort of be part of a project to sort of relaunch the website and build my own team. And that was sort of nearly 5 years ago. And sort of after having a sort of a fair crack at that, I decided that the time was right for me to try and use all that experience to sort of move on to other things, that was sort of 6 months ago. And I'm sort of still in the process, I guess, of kind of trying to find out where all of those experiences and the skills that I learned kind of actually can fit me into other things. So I'm kind of enjoying that sort of process at the moment as well, which is, sort of, it takes you back to those sort of uncertain days and things like that, but it's all good.
Yeah, what a really interesting journey you've had. And it all started with work experience. And it just goes to show what you can gain from your time on work experience. That ended up into a weekend job, and then it became paid summer work, became full-time role whilst you were still at university. And then from graduating, becoming an assistant picture editor to deputy picture editor, quickly progressing, but that was without, the hard work that you put into there. And I think one thing that is one continuous theme with your journey is it's just taking those opportunities when they presented themselves. And it was just being a hard worker. It was, putting the hours in, you put in so much hours, so much effort, And when the opportunities did present themselves, you really took, full advantage of that. And, again, looking at the way the industry was going when you were working at the Sun, at the Daily Mail, Mail Online, you could see that, publications were going down, more interest was going now into digital and online as well, and making that jump as well, future proofing yourself. It's like you've had your finger on the pulse all the way through. You're now on a new adventure, and I'm sure, soon you'll be telling us the best thing you did. How do how do you see into the future the way you've done, and how do you keep your finger on the pulse the way you've done?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think part of the reason why I wanted to change things up now, so I'm now kind of I'm 37. So I sort of identified the fact that as a head of department, even working as a digital picture editor, you're in a privileged position where you actually employ a lot of people to do a lot of the work for you. And you sort of, I guess you sit at the top of this pyramid and everything happens around you. And I was very aware of the fact that other than perhaps my management skills, which were increasing, my practical skills were definitely on the decline myself. And we live in this era at the moment where technologies everything changes so quickly. I'd be the first to admit, I sort of don't post on Instagram, never used Snapchat, TikTok, and these are all these sort of like tools that now sort of younger generations use to sort of communicate, share messages, tell stories. So I realized that, that I had to change something. Otherwise, I myself was going to be in danger of, perhaps into my 40s, finding myself maybe redundant, because things just do change so quickly now. So I was fortunate that I got to where I managed to achieve the level I achieved, and fortunate that I was able to make that. I am able to make that change. Some people, don't have that opportunity for whatever reason. But really, you kind of, I guess, keeping your finger on the pulse, there's only one way to do it, and that's to constantly think about pushing and moving forward whilst you can. And when I say whilst you can, obviously there are things that will naturally slow you down in life. A great example of that is when you get married and have a family, and that requires you to become rooted. There's other priorities in your life, things that need more of your attention. Before you have a family, you have this fantastic opportunity to really, really push yourself. And it's not about keeping up with the pace of how things are changing. You are the changing pace. You are the catalyst in making stuff happen, which is really exciting. And, you have a great opportunity in your, especially in your 20s, to be part of that. And then also kind of, sort of geographically, you can allow yourselves to go and work wherever opportunities might be. There might be in another city in this country, or it might be, another city around the world, New York or something like that. And taking those opportunities when you can, when you're not fixed and rooted, because that will come. I'm sort of sure that comes to most people. Sort of means that you naturally keep sort of like pushing yourself along. I'm aware that for lots of people, that's not quite the pace they want to work at, and for whatever reason, they sort of just choose to sort of perhaps take maybe the easier options and just move at a slightly slower pace, or a pace that suits them better. But that's how I sort of found myself where I am now. But like I say, I'm humble enough to admit that everything's changing very, very quickly around me, and I would like to almost re-educate myself and sort of self-innovate, if you like, try and, before that kind of wave just completely sort of passes me by and goes over my head. So yeah, that's kind of what I'd say to that.
It's great advice. They say a picture paints 1,000 words, Matthew.
Absolutely.
I can imagine from when you first started to where things are today, it's a completely different industry, as you've explained to us. I mean, tell us, what did the role involve? What was it that you did in the early days? And what does it involve today? How do you source those pictures, and how do you tell a story with those pictures?
Yeah, okay, fine. So it's quite a complex sort of answer. But I mean, firstly, I'd say that working in pictures is fantastic. everyone likes pictures. You know, we see it now more than ever. Instagram, you name it, people love sharing pictures. Pictures are so powerful. Ultimately, you know, they're seen as the unaltered truth of you know, kind of a moment, or sort of something that's happened in history, and it, you know, it sort of, you know, kind of remains. You know, you can't just change a picture. You know, you can in some sort of technical ways, but working for newspapers, there's obviously lots of things that are happening all around the world at any point, and obviously different publications cover different types of stories. And my experience working for the Telegraph, Mail Online, and the Sun actually gave me quite a broad kind of like landscape of all these different subjects. So Telegraph is obviously quite heavy on news and politics. Mail Online, equally news and politics, but then a lot of showbiz. And the Sun, probably a lot more kind of like showbiz and sort of fun features and news. So within pictures, literally all around the world, there are thousands of photographic agencies, and even more photographers, press photographers, paparazzi, all around the world. Working on a national newspaper picture desk, you could expect to receive between 50 and 100,000 pictures within 24 hours. So pictures kind of flood into you, sort of literally on an internal database. They come in from all around the world, lots of sort of recognizable agencies. Some pictures obviously might come from maybe a punter, like someone's taken a picture down the street and they've managed to get the email address to send it in. You have your staff photographers who are out covering events that sort of diary events or commission jobs. That could be an interview with a politician, or covering a court case, for example. All these pictures kind of flood in from around the world. And as a picture editor or a picture desk, it's your job to ultimately, make sure that you are covering the right stories, you've got coverage in the right sort of places. You then filter through all that content. You're looking for the stories that are relevant and the impactful pictures that either illustrate those stories, or impactful pictures that perhaps require a story to be written around that picture. And you would basically present those pictures in a series of conferences to the editor, the news editor, the foreign editor, showbiz editor, and so on. They would equally have those heads of department would have their own sort of agendas, which you would sort of, as a picture editor, you'd have to make sure you're sort of matching up, you're on the same sort of page. And ultimately from that, if you're speaking about a newspaper, obviously one newspaper is sort of published every day, so you're working towards one product. But working on a digital website, you're updating it 24/7, you know, all the time. So it's thick and fast, you know, pictures are flooding in. You know, you've just updated the website with one picture, but a new picture's come in, or a picture that's updates the story, or a more powerful picture, or a slightly better angle. And yeah, it's a never-ending sort of cycle, if you like. But pictures are, yeah, it can be really, really exciting, because like I say, you can be covering diary events like a court case that you know that A, B, or C are going to appear on trial. Similarly, especially working for like the Sun and the Mail Online, you might be buying, you know, exclusive sets of pictures from around the world of a A-list celebrity, and you'd be looking to acquire those pictures for a 24-hour exclusive period. And those pictures could cost you sort of, in some cases, upwards of £10,000-20,000. And, you know, you'd have that exclusively on your website, and that would be the only place in the world people can come and see those pictures. And obviously now with like the demographics and the figures, you can see kind of who's coming from where and how well certain stories do. So yeah, it's probably a very quick answer, but it's quite complex. I hope I've sort of answered that in a relatively understandable way. But
yeah, I mean, it is very complex. You know, there's so many different avenues that we can go down with this. You know, you hear about celebrities paying newspapers for, you know, or sorry, setting deals with newspapers so that they can have their pictures taken, appearing on beaches at certain points. Is there any truth in this? Is this something that really genuinely does happen?
I couldn't really comment on that. No, I don't think so. The media in general is obviously, it's a very kind of complex is the best word for it. But, you know, relationships, communication, how, you know, you're ultimately telling a story, and, you know, as a publication, you know, you want to be giving your readers, the audience, the truth, and here's great content. Some of it's for entertainment purposes, most of it should be sort of like for information or educational purposes. And then at the same time, yes, there are obviously lots of people, it's not just celebrities, politicians, that require perhaps some good PR. So they they might sort of want to be seen doing a certain thing. They wouldn't necessarily sort of set that up to sell it, but you'll often see sort of when there's a crisis, you'll often see a politician, for example, performing a certain task, which is just good. It's just clever PR. And those pictures, are sort of taken, and they go in all the papers, and everyone goes, "Oh, what a great guy!"
Tell a story.
And that's it. So anyway, yeah. So, but I would say one other point I perhaps forgot to mention there, when talking about pictures, is that what's really important to remember is that the real heroes there are the kind of the content makers, which in this instance would be the photographers. So they're the guys that are out there. They have they're obviously skilled photographers. I'm not going to claim to know anything about photography or how they do their jobs. You trust them to get out there and take great pictures. They obviously have to have their finger on the pulse of kind of the news agenda, know what's going on, know what's required. My job would perhaps be to brief them as best I can. But in some cases, lots of photographers, videographers would just be working in a freelance capacity. They will spend days, weeks, perhaps, kind of not getting paid, working on a specific job, and then they might sort of get the picture or the footage required that's of value to a publisher. And it's very easy to sit in an office and go, "Oh, great, thanks," but they're out there kind of in the rain, sort of sometimes 18 hours a day, trying to get the pictures that sort of sell the papers, basically.
Yeah. Their kits are not cheap either.
No.
Do you think photographers are getting a better reputation these days to what we knew in the past, especially late 90s, early
yes. Although I would say that, there's really press photography and sort of paparazzi are kind of, if you're a press photographer, you wouldn't describe yourself as a paparazzi. So you'll often see photographers that are standing outside a court. They might be wrongly referred to by a publicist or a member of the public as paps, and it's like, they're not paps. They're press photographers employed by publications, just the same way as the TV cameras are there, only you're watching the footage that they're kind of getting. So there's different types of sort of photography. I think obviously in the 90s, sort of when sort of paparazzi was at its kind of at its heights, which was before, by the way, 90s, I was still at school. So,
time.
It was, but it was it's a supply and demand. There's obviously some very tragic stories going around at the moment, but where instances where perhaps things have gone too far. But ultimately, it kind of goes full circle. People require publicity. They do things to get themselves, make sure they get themselves pictured, and then when they decide that it's enough for them, photographers or perhaps they're not necessarily inclined to just stop and go, "Okay, thank you." You can't have it both ways. Basically, you can't have your bread buttered on both sides. So, but again, that's probably quite a complex issue in itself. But it has settled down definitely, and hopefully it's sort of far less intrusive than it was in the 90s.
Yeah, indeed. And again, things are changing more. There's a lot of video content these days. A lot of newspapers have got their own channels now, and they're producing a lot of videos. Is this where things are moving? Of course, pictures are still very important. They do tell stories. We still need pictures. 24-hour news channels still use pictures, so they do have a place to play. But with newspapers moving more to digital content and producing their own live content and videos these days, are things changing from that perspective?
I think yes, but only because I think video is a technology that in it being readily available to people is quite a new thing. So everyone had, for a long time now, people have had the ability to take a photograph, go on holiday and just take a picture with a disposable camera or whatever back in the in the 90s or whatever. So really, video is just sort of catching up. And now everyone's obviously got sort of their camera phone, so everyone can film whatever's going on around them or take pictures. But fundamentally, they're two different things that offer two very different sort of experiences. You know, you want a nice picture of yourself and your best mate or your wife or whatever. You want to take a picture. You don't want to sort of like just film yourself for a couple of minutes and look back at that in a few years. So they're very different they're very different things, and they kind of contribute in very different ways to media. But obviously, as video kind of has become more accessible, I think that, you know, it's being used more, and, you know, obviously from what I can see, everyone's constantly filming everything these days, which perhaps isn't such a great thing. And maybe we might see a bit of a decline in the future generations. People kind of switch off from that sort of thing and want a bit of space and privacy, and, you know, kind of realize that posting every bit of your life is perhaps not such a good idea, you know, for, you know, as you get a bit older. But, you know, I think that it will be interesting to see how it all does develop, but the speed in which people could sort of like, you know, shoot something and sort of like, you know, get it out there into the world is lightning quick. It probably can't really go any quicker. So, you know, we'll see, but, you know, video is a great way of telling a story, obviously. But it's just another great way as far as I'm concerned. So
I think that's a great analogy you've used. You know, you don't want to film yourself for 4 minutes when you can get a quick picture, and you know,
yeah.
that will it'll suffice. It'll do just as well. Where do you see the industry going? And I know you just mentioned a bit there in terms of, you know, things cannot perhaps develop as any quicker, but, you know, things are constantly changing. Where do you see things in 5 years, 10 years from now?
So I think, again, I think go back to the sort of top of our conversation. That's something that I'm really interested and excited to sort of like try and explore and find out myself. So, you know, having sort of been at the top of, you know, that industry, from a picture point of view, I couldn't see exactly where it's going. You know, you sort of every day it's sort of more of the same. But I think that in terms of, you know, ultimately sort of storytelling, I think that, you know, that's never going to go away. So there's always going to be a demand for people to share their experiences or communicate important messages with the world. I think kind of at the moment we can already see how, like I said, how quickly some of the social media platforms allow people to just talk directly to an audience. You know, you don't need to go to, you know, the Sun or the Daily Mail to give them a story. You can just tell everyone, you know, your story and put it out there. Lots of freelance journalists are able to monetize their content using various platforms. There's platforms like Patreon, for example, where, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but you can set your own subscription model for people to come and sort of view, you know, appreciate your content. And, you know, using, like I say, even using platforms like Instagram and Twitter, you're able to self-publicize. So if you are a freelance journalist or photographer or videographer, you are literally able to build your own audience. So I think there's probably a lot to be said for, we might see, you know, kind of, you know, as younger generations sort of get a little bit older, we might see people choosing to take their news in different places. And I probably think that, you know, what we might see is some, you know, whether it's kind of, you know, the large publishing groups kind of like monetizing those opportunities, I don't know, but I think we'll definitely see perhaps some independent kind of organizations sort of realize, hang on a second, there's an opportunity here for us to gather together some of this great content that's out there and give people a fresh perspective on the world. So we'll see, but you know, like I say, it couldn't be any quicker at the moment for how quickly you can get news to your phone, get told what's going on. Lots of different platforms. There's lots of different publishers. Things like Apple News obviously offer you a different way of pulling together things that you're interested in. So, but supply and demand, like, you know, when the you know, the world wants to receive it in a different way, I think these technology companies will find different ways to deliver it. But I'm as keen as anyone, like I say, that I've made this change because I want to explore and find out sort of these things myself. So, yeah.
Exciting times indeed. Now, you know, again, for you to have got to the positions you've got and the experiences that you've had, again, it, you know, it comes from the hard work that you put in, that graft, taking that opportunity from work experience talk to us about some of those personal development skills, how you developed your own skills to get to where you've got to.
Yeah, sure. So I'd start by saying that, I make loads of mistakes. I still make plenty of mistakes. I can be very hot-headed, short-tempered, and or often feel like I've let myself down or make the wrong decision. So it's like we're all on a journey and it never really stops, I don't think. But especially when I was perhaps in my late teens, early 20s, I thought I knew better than most people, and I didn't really know exactly where I wanted it all to go. But whilst I could perhaps be a little bit petulant in those situations, I was able to sort of kind of match that with the fact that I would recognize in people around me, people that I wanted to learn from. So there might be someone senior to me saying that do it like this, do it like that. And there might be something about them that I didn't really aspire to be like. And that could be, that would be a bit of a problem for me. And I perhaps wouldn't have the respect that, they certainly would deserve at that point. So that's a, I would have let myself down there really. But at the same time, I would have identified key people in positions of sort of senior positions or positions of power, or, even in some cases, sort of my peers, and thought, I like that person. I respect that guy or woman for sort of how they handle that situation. And I would just try and get as close to them as possible, really, and make them notice me and make them want to invest their time in me. So, kind of in my early 20s, I was probably sort of, that I guess was my tactic, if you like, was to make sure that people that were in positions of power sort of knew who I was. And if they asked me to do something, they knew that I wouldn't stop until it was done. And if I didn't do it right, I would go back and do it. I wouldn't argue with them. I would always, sort of try and please the people that matter, basically. And you'd be surprised how quickly doors can open, opportunities can kind of come your way. Obviously, especially in media, lots of people can move from title to title, publisher to publisher, and I've had it that actually my move to the Sun, happened because the then editor of the Sun was the editor of the Daily Telegraph when I was at the Daily Telegraph. So you impress people, and you have some respect. Always sort of be honest and make sure you have a lot of integrity. And it might not happen quickly, but in my experience, those things do come full circle, and you sort of you get looked after. After you've made the sort of right impression on people. So yeah, I mean, but that process is always ongoing, I guess, and keeping those relationships and managing those relationships, I guess, kind of is important. But it starts literally from day one. The first when you walk in there, how you present yourself. Are you on time? On time isn't really good enough in an industry like that. You need to be early. You need to be in some cases half an hour before. There's no getting in and having a bit of time to get up to speed or turn your computer on. You need to be in at it. Be presentable, look smart. Don't come in with a obvious raging hangover. Brush your teeth. It really, really basic things. But it's a really people can be quite peculiar and particular, and if people take a bit of a disliking for you for a certain thing, like being scruffy, it's hard to shake that off. Reputations are hard built and easily lost. So, I definitely sort of like, don't dress at work how you dress down the pub with your mates. I don't believe in all this kind of coming to work in your own clothes type stuff. It's like, be presentable, make an impression, make people, you want these people to respect you. You want them to to listen to you and, have faith and put their trust in you. So yeah, a lot of that comes with it. It just comes with experience, but start with this basics, be presentable, have some manners and respect, that type of thing.
That's it. It's the same old truths, but they go a long way, don't they?
Absolutely.
Being presentable, being respectful, again, having manners, being courteous to employers, and you build a trust, and as you build that trust, more opportunities present themselves.
Absolutely.
And of course, you took full advantage of that. Now, for our audience, they'll be watching this thinking, this is great advice. What advice would you, we're already coming towards the end here, what final words would you say to our audience? What advice would you give to them that they can take today and apply to their own?
So I guess I would say that, obviously that nothing comes your way for nothing. Everything takes hard work. It takes commitment, and it takes consistency. Don't just think because you've done something right once, that's enough. You got to do it right 10, 20, maybe 100 times before people start, noticing what it is you're offering or what it is you're doing. So, don't give up on that. But really, I guess passion is the key, and if, identify what it is you like or what it is you love doing. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, don't stress about it. But try and align whatever it is you want to do as closely as you can to something that you have genuine interest in, because it's a long, long, long road. And if you don't have that interest, you burn out quite quick. And, as things change around you, you perhaps won't be motivated to kind of keep up to date with stuff or kind of push yourself harder. But it's never too late to change direction as well. I'd say, don't think because you've started going down one, sort of avenue, you can't stop and perhaps pivot or have a look at, sort of in other areas. But the important thing, as with anything in life, is to just get going. There's no like kind of practical experience is the most valuable thing. You'll either find out that you enjoy it or you hated it. But practical experience, get on with it. Get going, get yourself out there, keep learning. And like I say, if you can identify a few people that, perhaps might mentor you, or that you think, I like this person, I respect their values and I respect where they've got to in life, learn from them, and stick with that. But, definitely kind of passion and, try and keep it around something that you have genuine interest, because it would be a hell of a lot easier than if you have to just pretend to like it for a long time.
Wow. Some incredible words have been spoken here today, Matt Lidbury. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with us.
No problem. Pleasure.
So guys, you've heard it, be passionate, take those chances when they do come. And of course, you've got to enjoy what you're doing, and don't be afraid to change. If you've tried something and it didn't quite work out, there's nothing wrong with considering other options. But of course, have that passion, be consistent, as Matt's told us here today. Incredible advice from Matt here. So, Matt, thank you again so much. How can our audience connect with you?
So you can obviously there's a lot more about my experience, and my contact details are on my LinkedIn, which is just Matthew Lidbury. But I've also got a website, which is mattlidbury.com. And, there's, again, more about kind of what I currently offer. But, my email will be on there. And, any questions, any advice, I'd welcome any emails. You might find me asking you some questions as well about, sort of what it is you guys sort of think about current sort of, media and sort of news telling platforms. And, I might be bending your ear. So, I'd appreciate it.
So you've heard it there, guys. Go and connect with Matt. He's on LinkedIn. Of course, you can check out the website as well, mattlidbury.com. So from all the team here at the Change in Education Group and from myself, Amos Madrid, thank you very much indeed. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, please do make sure you subscribe. Hit the bell icon so that you're notified whenever we upload a video. And of course, like this video too. So thank you very much. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.